There's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hey, this is Bruce Coughlin. I orchestrated S&M2, and I think you'd be crazy not to listen to BODS Mayhem Hour, the best podcast out there.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather. And as always, I bring you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's a huge honor and privilege to welcome Bruce Coughlin of Metallica's S&M. Bruce is a orchestrator, musical arranger, and heavy metal symphonic of concerts. And Bruce was orchestrator and arranger for the recent two-night Metallica S&M with the San Francisco Symphony at the new Chase Center in San Francisco. He supplemented the legendary Michael Kamen orchestrations from the 1999 concert with 6 new orchestrations of songs from the past 20 years, along with a new orchestration of Master of Puppets and a revision of the 1999 Enter Sandman chart. So, Bruce, welcome to the show, and how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing awesome. Glad to have you on the show and talk about this recent new Metallica S&M. So, first off, how you been doing, and what have you been up to during the pandemic other than talking and promoting the San Francisco Symphony and Metallica's S&M2? Man, let's talk about all this. What's been going on?
Well, actually, I've been pretty busy. I lucked into... I don't just do heavy metal symphonic orchestration. I also do theater, I do opera, I do all kinds of different types of music. So I stumbled into a job just before quarantine hit, orchestrating an opera for a composer named Ricky N. Gordon. And that kept me very busy for almost 3 months. So I very much lucked out. And then I've been doing some demos for another composer named Scott Frankel for a new show he's writing. So I've been doing pretty well. It hasn't been too bad, knock on wood.
For anyone out there right now that does not know what a orchestrator and musical arranger is, please elaborate on this for the folks who don't understand that.
It's pretty complicated. I mean, my parents never actually figured out what it was that I do, even though I tried to explain it a million times. I mean, basically think of it this way. I'll do one visual analogy. Say you, as the orchestrator, were handed, say, a 4 by 6 inch pencil drawing. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was a hill. Maybe there was a church on the hill. Maybe there was a sun in the sky and a tree. And they said, okay, you can make a painting out of this. The only stipulation is there has to be a mountain, there has to be a sun, there has to be a church, and there has to be a tree. Other than that, you can go to town. It can be 8 by 7 feet. It could be in full color. You could make it as a collage. You can make it as an oil paint. You could do anything you want with the pencil sketch I gave you. That's kind of what orchestration is. So I take your song. I don't change the words. I don't change the tune. And everything else as an orchestrator, I'm not talking specifically S&M2 at this point, but generally as an orchestrator, you can do new accompaniments to the tune. You can often do complete new intros, dance breaks, outros, whatever. And you basically create the sound for that song.
So you basically give it the peaks, hills, and valleys of it.
Exactly. And also, say for my analogy of the little sketch, even though there were those 6 elements or 5 elements that I said, I could also add a fox.
Yeah.
I could add, a river in the background. So I do things like that where I'll add a string counter melody that wasn't there but helps to tie everything together, or certain punches in the brass or things like that.
Yeah, folks, just think of it as a roller coaster, just like the song takes you on a roller coaster with just more musical instruments involved. There you go.
Exactly. And hopefully more colors.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So what made you want to become a musician or even be part of a symphony? What was that spark, possibly, if you can recall? What was it that said, yeah, I want to try this at least?
You know, when I was a kid, I started playing piano quite young. I was like 4 or something like that. And I didn't really come from a musical family, though my mom was a singer, but it wasn't like a family of musicians. So they did send me to piano lessons. And then when I was about 9 years old, we moved away, and they didn't have enough money to continue piano lessons. So I said, you know what, I'm going to learn guitar. So then I became a guitar player, which has helped me out a lot in my later life. And then I went away to college. I kept doing music, went away to college for math and chemistry. But then I kind of got waylaid, and I didn't really do what I was supposed to do for math and chemistry, and I ended up in music. It kind of was by a fluke, and I ended up being conductor of a theater in Washington. And so then one thing led to another, and I became a composer for theater music. Specifically, I was most interested not in writing musicals, but like weird theater pieces that were kind of theater, opera, music, things like that. But then I just fell into orchestrating just by chance. And once I did that, I liked composing, but I never felt like I was a great composer. I never felt like I had amazing things to say that nobody else could say. But when I fell into orchestration, I was like, yeah, you know what? This is exactly what I like to do.
Any bands that someone would be surprised you like or style of music you like, especially like a band like Metallica, man. Are there any bands out there that would surprise someone possibly that you like?
I don't think so. I mean, I listen to so much music. You know, some of the big influences which aren't... Well, when I was playing guitar as a kid, the influences were like, you know, Beatles, Rolling Stones, The Doors. That was what was going on when I was a kid. Now, I mean, no, I listen to, you know, Tori Amos and Beirut and all kinds of things. Mumford and Son. I basically just listen to everything.
Michael Kamen led the San Francisco Symphony during the 99 show. Sadly, the music world lost Michael at the age of 55. He worked in film scoring and had performed with musicians such as Bryan Adams, David Gilmour, and Kate Bush, and more. How big of an impact was it losing Michael in the music world, in your opinion, still to this day?
Well, I mean, I didn't know him personally. I do know that I loved all his film scores. But one thing I do remember vividly is when S&M came out. And so at that point I was doing mostly theater music, and I listened to this thing, and, you know, it was symphony and heavy metal, and I was like, man, this sounds like nothing I've ever heard, and it's exactly what I wish I were doing. So, I mean, he had a huge influence on me. It was such luck that I got asked to do this, because it was, you know, something I dreamed about doing. But, yeah, I mean, clearly he was a major, major talent and got sick way too young.
I know that Pink Floyd did this a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken, add an orchestra and stuff like that to their music. But when you have like Metallica that crosses over like this, especially as big as they are, what do you think that says to actually blend and cross over, to take it to that next level, to add symphony to their music like this and include you guys?
I think it says most about Metallica. I mean, they're just so adventurous, so open to new things. I was impressed by all of that. I mean, they were basically game for anything. I mean, I think Lars, in one of the videos that was showing before the October screening of the film, S&M2, I think he talked about how, you know, we were young and we were cocky, and we were like, oh, this guy's going to write some music on top of our songs. Well, we're just going to play our songs, and he can do whatever score he wants on top. But, you know, he'll admit that he has mellowed over time and changed, and has been listening to a lot of different music himself. And now it's the complete opposite. They were so open. And there were a few songs, we'll probably talk about them, but All Within My Hands and The Unforgiven 3, I think it came mostly from James, too. I mean, he definitely wanted to try something different. And when I did the first two songs, Halo on Fire and Confusion, I was like, I know they want to, like, go towards a smaller sound and not be big all the time. And I was like, I get that, but if all my stuff is really small, then by comparison, it's just not going to work. It'll just, the way if you mix for something that's loud and then all of a sudden a small group plays, well, you need a new mix to make that really sound equivalent. Do you know what I'm saying? In terms of sound impact. So anyway, the first two songs I did pretty much in the style, in terms of writing style of S&M, the Michael Kamen S&M. In other words, it was big, and people played all the time, and there were never, like, breaks where the orchestra doesn't play. And after that, they said, oh, these are great, but think about doing smaller. We don't want everything to be big, 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 big. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And then I did Moth into Flame, and then I got to the two small ones, All Within My Hands and The Unforgiven 3. And those, Unforgiven 3 in particular, went through a lot of revisions, but actually so did All Within My Hands. And it was always from the viewpoint from James of going, I want it smaller, I want it smaller, I want it smaller. So, I give them a lot of credit. They were open to a lot of new things.
And James, when he did Unforgiven 3, I think that took him to a whole nother level as a musician to do that the way he did that song for S&M2.
He sang incredibly well. I mean, it just sounds spectacular, and he must have been so nervous. I mean, I don't know the guy. I don't know if he's done anything like that before, but to be behind a guitar for all your life and then all of a sudden, like, not be playing one must have been so scary.
Yeah, you're standing there with, you're right. You're standing there without your guitar and just kind of like, oh, you're basically naked without your guitar because you've had it all your life. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, don't screw up.
But you heard in the vocal, I mean, he just gave it his all.
He did. Yeah, really good. I like I said, man, this album, if it doesn't make the hair stand on your neck and rip out your gut, there's just something wrong. It's just me personally. I like every bit about this album. I think there's so much growth between S&M1 to S&M2, if that makes sense. It sounds like it's more powerful, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, when you work on something, it's hard to be too objective. So I did just listen to it a couple of days ago because it just arrived, and I was like, wow, you know what, this sounds really good.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, as an orchestrator, we're used to putting on CDs, and, like, we put them on shaking because you never know what's going to come out. So I'm like, oh, man, I hope this sounds good. I hope I don't want to kill myself. But it sounded great.
Michael Tilson Thomas had the idea to recommend you to James and Lars. Looking back on this, what would you tell him now after making this incredible live album?
Thank you. No, I mean, I have to say it was a highlight of my life doing this. In terms of my career, it was definitely a highlight. It just hit everything that I really love doing, the pop and the symphony, and it was hard to work on. It was not simple. And, I would just thank him, from the bottom of my heart. I mean, we've done some really fun things together over the years, but this was the most fun.
When you first heard about that, though, what was your thoughts going through your mind? Like, is this guy for real? What's going on?
Well, we had done a bunch of stuff kind of recently, and one was a Bruce Hornsby concert. It was a series of concerts with New World Symphony, where Bruce was trying to experiment with some modern music techniques mixed in with his pop songwriting. And so, he was interested in Elliott Carter and Ligeti and Penderecki and all kinds of things like that, and wanted to fuse the two together. So we had just done a concert in that vein, but the ensemble was quite a bit smaller. It was a very small, like, chamber orchestra. So I think that gave him the idea. I mean, I didn't want to second guess him. I didn't want to say, "Oh man, you picked the wrong guy." I was thrilled.
Now, you just talked about the 6 songs that you arranged and orchestrated. Were there any songs that you wanted to push the limits on with Metallica and the symphony, possibly?
Not really, because the pushing seemed to come from their side as to going smaller, not to going bigger. I mean, there were some things we talked about. Maybe I think it was The Day That Never Comes. I think we talked about having like the first verse just orchestra and the band not playing. But, you know, they were so busy up until then, and things like that would have required major rehearsal, which we didn't have time for. No, I would say the pushing came on the small side.
Bruce, did you have any favorite songs while working with Metallica on S&M2? Were there any that you hoped was on the album possibly, or that you actually liked even more after working with them on this?
You know, I have to say, Day That Never Comes came out great. I love that song. And Halo on Fire, love. And, of course, the 2 smaller ones I just think are spectacular, All Within My Hands and The Unforgiven 3. All Within My Hands I only knew from the album version. So this is so different. The difference didn't come just from me because they had been doing recently, I don't know for how many years, but they'd been doing All Within My Hands in a kind of acoustic setting anyway, in concert. So they had sort of abandoned the more metal sound from the album. But that song is just, I just listened to it again today, and it just sounds so great. And, you know, I love Moth into Flame. I think that's some people's least favorite with the new charts. I actually really like it. I like the song. That was a funny song because if you listen to the CD version, the tempo is quite a bit slower. I mean, it's like quarter note equals, I don't know, 150, 155, something like that. And so I did the arrangement based on that while Greg was hunting around for a reference live performance for me to do the actual arrangement to. And then the reference track came in, and it was from a live performance, and it was like quarter note equals 180 starting out, and then when it gets to the double time feel, it goes to like 200, and I was like, oh man, you guys, this is. I mean, an orchestra, we just can't play that fast. And so I tried to talk them into doing it at the album tempo, but you know it's hard because they've been doing the faster tempo. And Greg was great. He was like, I see what you're saying. I'll try. I'll talk to the guys, but you know, who knows? And so that's probably the one disappointment, Moth into Flame, where I think if it had been a little slower, it would have landed from an orchestral standpoint a little better.
You were there for the 2 nights, and I got to give Scott Pingle a huge kudos on this because he did Anesthesia Pulling Teeth, the bass solo by Cliff Burton. I mean, this is Cliff Burton's baby, and Cliff Burton, you know, he did a lot of instrumental stuff with Metallica back in the day while he was here on this earth. And you got to see Scott cover Cliff's Anesthesia and Pulling Teeth. What was your reaction seeing him play this, and plus the reaction from Cliff's dad, the fans? You were there, man. Give us a little insight on that.
Well, you know, the first time I heard it was not at the concert because for a couple of days before at the Cow Palace, we had some rehearsals. And so then one day we got to that point in the show, and Scott comes up, and I'm sitting on stage because my headphones were there. You know, we had to use headphones to hear everything. And so I was sitting there with my scores and, you know, basically listening for wrong notes and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden Scott's thing came up, and I'm like, oh, I'll get a little break. And so I'm sitting there, and he started, and my jaw dropped. I was like, wow, this is like so incredible. And it was great to watch the guys because they were like, they'd heard it before, of course, at Metallica headquarters, but still, you know, everybody's jaw dropped. It was just amazing. It's definitely one of the highlights of the show.
In your own opinion, what do you hope everyone takes away from this experience when they put this album on to listen to it? What do you hope they get from it?
I hope they get excitement because it's so exciting. I hope they come away understanding just how adventurous Metallica really is. I mean, they've been around a long time, just as long as I've been around. And they just don't stop. I mean, it's like one new thing after another. I give them props for that over and over and over. It's so great.
Yeah, and they're getting ready to, if I'm not mistaken, or already doing a new version of Nothing Else Matters for a cartoon movie, if I'm not mistaken. I was like...
Oh, really? That's cool.
I was like, that's... Yeah, like you said, man, they never stop. And I think that's cool. Once you stop growing, you just pretty much, I don't know, fade out, if that makes sense. So...
Yeah. And they're not fading out.
No, not by far. Any bands that you would like to see cross over and do some orchestral things like this, man? Any bands that you have on your bucket list, maybe?
No, but I should give that some thought, especially under quarantine. There are plenty of bands I like. Let me give that a thought and get back to you on that. Do you have any that you want done?
Sure. I'd love to see like a punk band. I'd like to see Rancid do one. I would like to see maybe like... I know they'll never do it, but no FX, something off the wall like that, man, to see these bands do it.
The thing that gets tricky with these is that, of course, the things that are solid walls of sound, it becomes hard to find a space for the orchestra. And what I thought was really good with the choice of material on S&M2 is that there was a lot of space for the orchestra to shine, even when there were places where clearly with the band just cranking, it was just, you're never going to hear them. But that's fine. They disappear for a few bars, and then there's spaces where you can hear them. I think something that was too pedal to the metal, like start to finish, that would be hard for an orchestra to accompany. You know, it's funny, when I did Day That Never Comes, I told them that, I was talking before about how I started like in a bigger orchestration style, and then they asked me to get smaller, and then I did the two chambery ones, and then before I did Master of Puppets and Enter Sandman, the last one I did was The Day That Never Comes, and I was like, what should I do with this? Should I do the same thing I did on the others? Kind of the same approach. I said, I feel like I should do something different. So I was like, what if on this one I actually left space for the band a lot? So you kind of don't notice. I was surprised. You kind of don't notice listening to it, but there are places where the orchestra just drops out. I'm like, you know what? The band is cranked here. There's nothing I can say that will do anything more than just make more noise on top of it. So I'm like, I'm going to just drop out and then come in on those spots where it's really key. And that actually seemed to work really well on that chart.
They did a thing that should not be on S&M1. I was kind of shocked that they didn't have it on S&M2. I didn't know if it just didn't fit right or what happened, but I was kind of shocked that it wasn't on there.
I wasn't around for the song list choices. Edwin knows more about that. But even when he came on, I think there was only one slot that they were debating. Most of the songs got decided by the band and Greg, I think.
Do you think S&M2 will hold up more than the original S&M, or what's your thoughts on that, man? Or do you think they're kind of equal, or do you see more growth on S&M2?
I haven't listened to S&M, the first one, since starting on this. For obvious reasons, I didn't want to be influenced or whatever. It's legendary in my mind. I assume it's legendary in everybody's mind. But I think S&M2 will be just as legendary. I think it sounds spectacular. I think the fact that, and I think reviewers have pointed this out too, the fact that it went to another place with the symphony doing their own stuff at the beginning of Act 2, and things like that, and the Scott solo, and I think it accomplished what the band wanted, which was not to be a repeat. So it wasn't just 10 songs, full out, loud, start to finish. It had a lot of variety. When you listen to the CD again, it's like, wow, there are hills and valleys on this CD, and it's great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Bruce, how can folks stay in touch with you? Buy Metallica's S&M2. How can they do that, good sir, whatever you got coming up?
Well, my website is brucecoughlin.com. You can help them spell it, I guess. It's Coughlin. And, of course, with quarantine, things aren't really coming up. I did work on that one opera. There's a bunch of shows that got postponed. We're all hoping that next year all this backlog of stuff will come up. I worked on a show with based on a James Agee novel. It's called Knoxville, that Steve Flaherty and Lynn Ahrens wrote, and we were supposed to have done that in the spring, but it got postponed till next year. So anyway, we're all in the same boat. We all have our fingers crossed that all this backlog of stuff can, be seen finally. But if they go to the website, that's the first place they can find out when stuff is starting up again. And
before I let you go, good sir, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Sure. Hey, this is Bruce Coughlin. I orchestrated S&M2, and I think you'd be crazy not to listen to BODS Mayhem Hour, the best podcast out there. Hey there, this is Bruce Coughlin. I orchestrated Metallica's S&M2, and I want you all to subscribe to BODS Mayhem Hour, the best podcast for music out there.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Hour podcast. Get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link, YouTube link, and please subscribe to our YouTube link because we have a lot of great stuff coming up, and we're all over the platforms as well. Also, get out and check out Bruce Coughlin's stuff that he has, and plus Metallica's S&M2. You will not be disappointed. So, Bruce, thank you so much, and I wish each and every single one of you guys the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.